All right, folks, so here's the question. Should someone who intentionally exposes someone else with the HIV virus, should they get the full force of the law? Attorney at law Bert Samuels, I think so, and he joins us with more on the topic. Good morning, Mr. Samuels. How are you, sir?
Morning to you and your viewers.
I won't tell them what you did to me before we came on.
Bad man, bad man.
A serious discussion, though. What obtains now, sir? What obtains, if it happens now, what happens to that person?
Well, the prosecutor has to go to the Offences Against the Persons Act, which is an 1864 law, long before HIV took its toll in late 70s, early 80s, when it was a death sentence. And they have to carve out sections 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, which really has to do with administering a poisonous or dangerous substance on another person, causing grievous bodily harm. So it is an innovative way to use an old law, an 1864 law, 1 year before Morant Bay Rebellion, and putting that and trying to fix 1919 in the 70s and 80s, rather.
Yeah.
So my thing is, we should have a law on its own.
Yeah, but even with that law, I'm not certain I got the answer. That what you go jail, you're fined.
Oh yes, and well, the section they were relying on is for 3 years. Really, 3 years. And remember, when it began to take its toll, that is HIV, it was a death sentence because there was no cure, or there was nothing to abate the effects of HIV. So at that time, it was inordinately inadequate for 3 years, where someone deliberately infects you.
3 years in jail?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Given that it's no longer a death sentence, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but given that it no longer is a death sentence, don't you think that a 3-year custodial sentence is fair enough for someone who does that?
That's interesting. This is what the parliamentarians debate, right? And if I were in that debate, my position would be, if you cause me to be taking medication for the rest of my life, and in the long run, shorten my life, I don't think 3 years is adequate. Other kinds of injuries, which are that lasting, would attract at least 10, 15 years. So I don't think that is adequate. It's 3 years. I would not vote for 3 years. I'd vote for a maximum of 15 years and leave it up to the judge to give something within the range, depending on how egregious it is.
Why 15?
Well, because taking medication for the rest of my life and I have to be practicing safe sex with everyone, that's a totally inhibiting state of life. So that's too life adjusting when the person did it deliberately.
Yeah.
How do you prove that it was a deliberate spread?
No, that's a great challenge for the prosecutor. The ideal case would be that the prosecutor brings that you went and got tested and the results were told to you, and after that date, you had unprotected sex. That's the classic way that I would approach the proof of that case.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson, J.M.R. Johnson, who was the policy and advocacy officer, he said that criminalizing willful transmission would exacerbate existing social barriers for people living with HIV. He also goes on to say that if it is to be criminalized in any way, the move should also apply to other sexually transmitted infections. You want to talk about that?
Well, I think what he's alluding to is that he doesn't want HIV to be, as it were, the only thing that becomes offensive, because the AIDS, people who are dealing with the advocates for the protection of persons with AIDS, do not like when discriminatory positions are put against them as a group. So he's saying that, gonorrhea, any other kind of sexual infectious disease should also be along in the catalog. And we shouldn't single out HIV because it already has its adverse, approach in life. But I must tell you, there's an interesting provision in the Sexual Offences Act, Section 5 of the Sexual Offences Act, which seeks to have marital rape. So this is how the law looks at it. It says that if a husband gets consensual sex, has consensual sex with his wife, but he knew he had an infectious disease, it converts that consensual sex to rape.
Wow.
Yes. So,
Wow.
you know, your wife, and your wife is having sex with you, you know that you have an infectious disease. It doesn't even say AIDS, which is, to me, a little dangerous. Just an infectious disease.
Yeah.
The law treats that consent as rape.
Yeah. May I posit that what you said earlier, that if you have HIV, you're going to be taking medication for the rest of your life, it would shorten your life. I suspect that other sexually transmitted diseases would not ensure that.
I think there is a complete cure. As I'm a layperson.
Right, and you wouldn't have to be taking.
So AIDS is in a category by itself.
Right.
And herpes too, because herpes really doesn't.
Which is what you are saying.
Yes.
What?
But also, remember there are penalties for public health where you are infected by a hospital, not deliberately, but that a lot of persons have gotten multi-million dollars because they have been infected in the public health scheme or even by your own doctor.
Yep.
So that it doesn't have, it's not just criminal punishment. There can be civil problems with that. So the Jamaican government, the hospitals have paid out millions for inadvertently infecting persons with HIV.
Okay. I still want to go back to that willful part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Because, again, still playing devil's advocate, there are times when persons who are aware that they have contracted an infectious disease end up having unprotected sex with a long-time partner or just someone as a fling, so to speak. But in the moment, they could be intoxicated, etc., and end up having unprotected sex and passing that on. Is that something that could stand up in court? Like how?
That's interesting because drunkenness has been used by a lot of persons as an excuse in the criminal courts. It has had little success. So that, you go and get drunk and then you forget to tell your partner that's not going to help you very much because your drunkenness was deliberate. So, you have to be careful. So you can't say I was drunk, that's why I overtook 7 cars on the road and killed 3 young girls going to school. That's not going to help you. So drunkenness has not been easy to use as a defense.
Yeah. What kind of traction are you getting for your position?
Well, you guys have called me, after this interview. And also, the advocates say that if we criminalize it too harshly, people are going to refrain from getting tested so that they don't want to be said that they know they have AIDS. So it can be the cause of people not wanting to be tested. And that's an interesting and attractive argument. That's part of the pushback. Yeah,
so part of your answer was that we called you, but you are an experienced attorney, Mr. Samuel. So again, I'll ask you, how do you feel this might go because of your experience?
All right, I think that the Parliament should look at it. It should not resist and use an 1864 law to govern that. And I think that AIDS is still in some first world countries where healthcare is free, yes, but where you have to pay for your drugs and take it every day and people become conscious that you have AIDS, that's another social factor. You infect me, other persons know I can't get a job, nobody wants to come near me. That's part of the difficulty with transmission of AIDS. That's why it should be treated as an egregious offense to deliberately infect someone.
Yeah. I have a 2-part question for you, Mr. Samuels. One, what's the next step in this process to get it into law? And 2, given that we're still using that 1864, I believe you said, law offenses against the person, how do we get that changed to be updated to match the times in which we are?
Well, you have to put it on the raft of legislative changes in the Parliament, and they prioritize ZOSOs and states of emergencies and other things. This is going to be a left behind legislative anchor. Early in the 70s and 80s, it was a high on the agenda it has fallen much lower now. So the hope that it will become debated in Parliament is maybe 30% chance, in my view.
Yeah. You didn't come here for this question, and my producer might give me a hard time for this, but this morning in our Hot Topics, we were reading that a senator is suggesting that you bring back, well, not bring it back because I think it's still on the books, but the death penalty for certain, I think it's the story that we're talking about here was the young lady that had her throat cut.
And I declare she's my client. The mother of the child is my client.
Yeah. Or the mother of the child.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I came back and said, I do not believe in the death penalty for any reason at all. I don't think we have the right to decide who should live and who should die. What are your thoughts on the death penalty? I can leave out this story, but what are your thoughts on that?
I share that position with you. There are cases where it has been imposed, and wrongly so. In England, death penalty was abolished because about 3 cases came up where the persons were innocent, and they were pardoned posthumously, pardoned from their graves. That's one of the difficulties. I don't believe in the death penalty. I think that punishment should be swift and harsh, but not the taking of the life of another person. But that's a debate which will never end in our population. Yeah. A lot of your viewers are going to say that I'm a horrible person.
No, Garth suggested that if it can be proven beyond, well, I wouldn't say reasonable doubt, beyond doubt, then he wouldn't have an issue with it. I still think it shouldn't happen. But even if I agree with what you said about those cases in England.
But Minister Chuck has our position.
Okay. All right, good enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Good to see you, sir, always, and thanks for speaking with us this morning. Very well explained. God bless you and your family, and all the best for the holiday season, sir. I still won't tell them what you did to me.
Death penalty.
Well, some kind of penalty. Blessings, my friend. Take care.
One love.
Bert Samuels, attorney at law.
That's right. After the break, we discuss another story making the headlines. Stay with us on Smile.